What's up, guys? Jake and Rex from One Hive bringing you a new series, or let's call it a mini series. We're going to be doing tips on building your bases, war bases, obviously. We're going to do one at Town Hall 8, Town Hall 9, and Town Hall 10. Rex, what's going on, man?
Hey Jake, thanks for having me, and it's pretty awesome to start this new mini series with you. A lot of questions have been coming to us about how to design a base. I know a lot of our clan mates are always asking us, "Hey, check out my new war base. What do you think about it?" So I think this is a good part of our series, and it'll help a lot of players, hopefully, to design better bases, and then we can continue with the base breakdown series after.
Yeah, I agree. They're always asking about their bases, and then you have YouTubers, Twitch streamers. It's a constant thing. Base reviews. Look, check out my new base. What do you think? What can be improved? So we're going to try to. We're not giving you a here's the base to use, but we're going to try to give you tips, some things that you definitely need to have in your base, and so on to just help you build your own better base. Let's just dig right into it, Rex. We're going to start at Town Hall 8, and we're going to start at the basics. So let's just start with defensive buildings. Tell us a little bit about each one.
Yeah, so the most important things is to know and understand exactly what each defense is and what each defense is best and most effective against. So let's start off with a cannon. This cannon is obviously it's a ground only targeting defense. But the nice thing about a cannon is that even though it has the same damage per second as an archer tower, the cannon shoots much faster and yields, and because of the faster rate of fire, it's able to destroy a lot of ground troops a lot quicker. Its counterpart, the archer tower, attacks a lot slower, but each attack does inflict a lot more damage per second, or damage per shot, excuse me. So these two are typically called your point defenses, and when you're thinking about going war focused and war centric, you want to be upgrading your cannons and your archer towers first, because these are your primary defenses to destroy hogs, do a lot of damage against golems and giants, whereas your splash damage, your mortars and the wizard towers are not as effective against those troops.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that you see a lot of people upgrade their splash damage first, and there's probably a good reason for that. They're wanting to protect their resources as they're upgrading a town hall. But there's no question that in a war scenario, and this is what this channel is focused on. We're not about farming or different strategies like that. It's all about war for One Hive. And in a war scenario, your point defense is probably your bigger asset. Yes, splash damage helps if you can ever flank a group of wizards or witches. It does help with that. But more times than not, your point defense is your main line of defense. So upgrading them is definitely important. Moving on to the splash damage, though, tell us a little bit about the mortar and the wizard tower, Rex, and how you look at those.
So mortars are generally better against witches, and of course, like your very basic tier 1 troops like barbs and archers. But I think mortars are slightly better than wizard towers against witches. When you're fighting off wizards, however, wizard towers are usually a little bit better to upgrade. Both splash damage buildings, both your wizard tower and your mortar have low hit points. So you got to keep that in mind and consider that when you're designing a base. You don't want to put them, generally you don't want them put on the outskirts of your base where the troops will be initially coming in. You want to give it some protection if at all possible. And going a little bit back, cannons have a lot more hit points than any other defensive building. So generally, you want to put those on the outside or on the exterior of your base where attacking troops will be coming in first.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And it's not a major difference at Town Hall 8 in hit point levels, but every hit counts. If you can make a wizard or something shoot at it in extra time, that can actually make a difference in a raid. When it takes uh, defenses like, or excuse me, troops like wizards, Pekkas, things like that, there's a lot of damage built up in those hits. So even one extra hit on a base, that might be what makes the difference. Something gets to flank it or take that troop out before it takes out your town hall. So that can make a big difference. The other two that we haven't talked about, obviously, the Tesla and the air defense, both very important. Tell us your thoughts on those, Rex.
Yeah, before I go into that, there was one point that I forgot to mention is wizard towers need to be upgraded, especially if you're prone to Loonian attacks. Your wizard tower is going to be your most effective because against loons, because balloons will clump on defenses.
That's a good point. And I would say I would rank wizard towers over mortars because of the fact that they're air and ground defense. They can shoot both. Mortars are strictly ground defense, so I would rank them above mortars for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I would upgrade my wizard towers before my mortars. The earlier point was just that mortars are a little bit more effective against witches. But moving on to air defenses. Air defenses have one of the highest defensive, as a defense, it has one of the highest hit points. They have a very high rate of fire, and they shell out the most damage. So these are going to be your best tools against dragons, loons, almost any type of airs. They're a little bit lacking when it comes to a mass minion attack against the Loonian, and that's where the Wizard Tower kind of helps out to take out minions in groups. Air defenses will shoot down minions one by one. They'll usually waste an extra missile to destroy a minion. However, because of the amount of time that air defenses take to develop, a lot of people, and I think it's the general public, the casual clasher will not upgrade your air defenses. And this is a big mistake because as a Town Hall 8, you're just going to be attacked by dragons day in, day out, every single war, every single attack. If you have creamy air defenses, you're just going to get dragged.
Man, I couldn't agree more. And going back to what I just mentioned before, I tend to favor defenses that attack both air and ground. I tend to favor the archer tower over the cannon, the wizard over the mortar. But in my opinion, air defense trumps all of that. If you are in a war, now in farming, okay, if you don't upgrade your air defense, whatever. But in farming, or excuse me, in wars, if you're in a war clan and you're worried about wars, air defense is the most important thing you've got in your base at Town Hall 8 because the most effective strategy of 3-starring a Town Hall 8 is a dragon or an air attack. So you cannot neglect it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Moving on to the next defense is your Tesla. We're not going to be talking about the Expo or the Inferno since those are going to be coming later in our series. But the Tesla is one of my favorites, if not my most favorite defense. And the reason for that is the high amount of damage per second. Hidden Teslas are really effective against defense targeting troops because when a Tesla pops out, it'll delay and halt any troops that are targeting defenses that are deployed already. So I think we've talked about it in our base breakdown before, but when a hidden Tesla pops out and someone has hogs or loons already deployed, everything will halt for a second and they'll reprioritize and see what defense is closest to them.
Yeah, if people that follow the channel know exactly what you're talking about. We've shown it on a stream before, or actually on a video before, of even across the base, balloons that were already deployed, the Tesla pops, they pause for a second. What it does is actually recalculates what a target they're going to go to, because in the instance of, let's say we drop it's a hypothetical here, let's say we drop a balloon right here, and there's a Tesla, okay, right here, and it pops. The reason it makes it recalculate is because now this is the closest defense. It doesn't matter if the Tesla pops over here, it still pauses for just a moment to recalculate, and then it'll go back to its original target as long as that's the closest target. But it can cause trouble for those type of attacks, and I agree with you. People, I see it all the time, and I think it's because even at Town Hall 8, you've got 3 upgrades of 3 Teslas. They're expensive. They take a long time. Then you go to Town Hall 9. You've got another one. It's expensive. It takes a long time. People neglect their Teslas, and it's a huge mistake because upgraded Teslas are a very powerful asset for you.
I concur. They are so amazing when you put them in the core, centralized, and you have either your clan castle troops or your heroes distracting for you while those Teslas are inflicting massive amounts of damage.
Yep, couldn't agree more. And they're obviously they get double damage against a P.E.K.K.A. And a lot of people, even at Town Hall 8, like to use the go wipe. It can be an effective strategy. So that oops, that's the air defense. So that can stop a go wipe if you've got those upgraded. Because again, it's a lot of damage coming out to them. I think that's about it for the defensive buildings, Rex. Anything else to add before we move on to other buildings?
No, let's go ahead and start with the next set of buildings.
Yeah,
and talk about their HP values.
Yeah, the main thing that the rest of your buildings are often referred to as trash buildings. And in essence, they are trash buildings, but you have to use them as the asset they are. You have some buildings that are extremely high in hit points. And what you can use those for is to defend, to hold up troops while your defensive buildings are taking them out. Talk to us, Rex, about which ones are our high HP buildings and how you like to use them.
Yeah, great, Drake. So the highest HP building is, of course, your town hall. But after that, it goes from clan castle to DE storage to elixir and gold storages. So you always want to consider the location of these to protect your most valuable defenses. What I mean by that is, say this base, what we have in front of us, is being attacked by dragons. You see, if the dragons were coming from the top into this base, Munizi has put 2 really high HP buildings blocking those dragons' path while this air defense is attacking it. And this is a great placement, especially for a Town Hall 8, where you want to put those high HP buildings in between your most critical defenses. We'll get into that a little bit later, but you want to place them in between your most critical defenses so that they can shell out the most damage while being protected.
Yeah, I agree. It goes back to what we talked about, your air defense. The 3-star strategy at Town Hall 8 is 2 things, either hogs or more times than not, because hogs are a little bit more difficult to use, is dragons or dragloon. So when you can put these high HP buildings guarding your air defense, it makes those dragons, they're going to stop at every building. And she's even got the army camps there where you've got them coming in from too. So they've got to stop, kill those army camps, which are also high HP buildings, and the storages, all the while that air defense pecking away at those dragons. She might take out 2 dragons. That can make a huge difference
that's
in the outcome.
That's a great point, Jake. And so army camps are your next set of buildings that are very high amount in health. The ones here, I'm going to go ahead and circle the ones that are not high in HP. And this might seem obvious to most people, but builders' huts have very low HP. Every barrack, both dark and normal barracks, have very low HP. Gold mines, DE drills, and elixir collectors all have very low HP. And then your spell factory and your lab have very low HP. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to, say you have 1 star and you already sniped out the town hall and you need a couple of extra buildings to destroy to get that extra 50%, you always want to be going for these low HP buildings.
Yeah, I agree, but they're still, you still want to use them as defenses. They're not near as effective as the ones we've talked about that have the high HP, but you definitely want to use them as defenses. The other thing it's sort of a segue into our next point, the key elements, is how you want these high HP buildings in between your air defense. We see it all the time. Town Hall 8's clumping all 3 air defenses in their core, even sometimes on the same side of their town hall. That is not a good strategy, because once your dragons or whatever balloons, whatever gets there, they have no more travel time and they don't have to stop at any other building. They simply can take them all out. So like Moniz has here, she has the town hall and the clan castle separating. No matter which direction you come from, you've got to kill those 2 huge HP buildings before you get to the next air defense.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's one of our key elements that we have for Town Hall 8s is to make sure none of your air defenses are clumped. You can see that Munizi has these 3 air defenses. They're both triangulated, and they have a good amount of defenses between them and high HP buildings between them. So, as you were saying, it doesn't matter which path these dragons are going from. They're going to run into the Town Hall and the Clan Castle. And then the outside stores, it doesn't matter which way the dragons are attacking from. These high HP buildings are blocking, kind of defending and stalling out the dragon attacks. So this is a very good placement to consider as a Town Hall 8 to make sure your key core air defenses are triangulated in a manner with good HP buildings between them.
Yeah, before we move on from from that key element to the next one, let's just say it this way. You want to have your air defenses spread out, not all clumped up in the core, but you also want them protected. You don't want them exposed. You don't want a group of hogs to be able to go drop, and the first thing those hogs attack is your air defense. You don't want a group of balloons to be able to be dropped, and the first thing those balloons attack is your air defenses. Spread out but protected is the key at Town Hall 8. Let's move on in the sake of time to our next key element, talking about the other most effective strategy at Town Hall 8, which is hogs, and our best defense against those, which is giant bombs.
So, as you were saying, Town Hall 8s are the 2 most common army composition are hogs and dragons, but the most effective tool in your arsenal is this double set of giant bombs. You preferably want to place it somewhere in the core, somewhere well protected. And what I mean by well protected is hogs always target defenses first. So if this giant bomb set were to say out here, this is easily avoided or baited. They can just send 1 hog to trigger the giant bombs. So that is very exposed and avoid a poor placement. However, in this core right here, doesn't matter which path the hogs are coming from, it's quite a bit of an investment to try to trigger those. So what will happen is people will just neglect it and send in hogs anyways. And then once the hogs move in, they're going to be triggering. Because these 2 giant bombs are between defenses, they're going to run in and kill this mortar. Next, either target the Tesla here or the 80 here and trigger both of these. And it doesn't matter if they're coming from the top. They'll attack this 80 and Tesla and then try to attack this mortar and then trigger them.
Yeah, that's the key is having at least, well, I mean, I say having at least, you've only got 3 giant bombs at Town Hall 8. So obviously you're going to only be able to have 1 double set, but you've got to have that double set. It can make the difference in turning hogs into bacon or having them 3-star your base. It at least gives you a chance. Now, a good hog raider is going to find a way to exploit it, is going to find a way to go ahead and path their hogs correctly around it. There's nothing you can do about that, especially at Town Hall 8 with only 1 double set. But you have to at least have the threat of it there. And speaking of the threat of it there, you need to have multiple possible double bomb locations, not just a single where they know exactly where your double bombs are.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jacob. That's exactly what I was planning on saying is Munizi has 1 possible placement here, a 2nd possible placement here, a 3rd possible placement here, and a 4th possible placement here. So I tell this to my clanmates all the time. A single 2x4 space is one of the most scary things to see as a raider when you're scouting out a base, if you know exactly what you're looking for. And the reason is because of this double giant bomb set. If there are no 2x4 spaces, you know the space can be hogged. You know you can use your heals to heal through any single giant bomb set, but a single 2x4 set is very scary to scout out.
Yeah, it can end your hog raid immediately. That's the threat, and that's the problem with the double bomb, is that no matter what level hogs they've got, even if they can't have them at town, but even if a Town Hall 9 was attacking it and had level 5 hogs, double bomb still wipes those out. The raid can end immediately. So it's a must. It's one of our key elements. You've got to have 1 double giant bomb set, and you need to have it in between defenses. Remember, hogs are traveling from defensive building to defensive building. It's got to be in between those. You don't set it off by itself. And let's pretend hypothetically that this mortar was not here. This wall was right there. That's not a good place for them because they can run right by it and straight out to there, and they might not ever trigger those double giant bombs if they're on the outside of these defensive buildings. So having it between the two is the proper placement.
Let's go ahead and move on to our third key element, and this one is not so key. It can be effective for people who are just learning how to raid, but a centralized clan castle it's actually a very valuable way to deter any kind of hog attacks or any other giant attacks or non-luring attacks. And Monize's base here, she doesn't have a centralized, and this is a very easy lure. However, if her clan castle was in the center here, it would be a lot harder to lure, and it takes quite a bit of investment. Either a group of hogs, a group of giants can be used to lure, but at Town Hall 8, you only have 225 maximum army camp space, including your clan castle. And so just to get off the lure, it can be quite an investment.
Yeah, I agree. There's different kinds of bases, and this obviously is not a difficult lure base, but it's not designed for that. But you see it all the time. People design bases strictly to make the lure difficult. And like Rex was saying, at Town Hall 8, if they have to invest 5 hogs, 6 hogs maybe just to get that clan castle out, to get the lure done, that can be a very effective tool for you because troop space is at a premium, especially at Town Hall 8. So remember that when you're setting up your base. If you can make it a very difficult lure, that can change the outcome of a lot of raids.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on to our traps. We've already talked about the giant bomb, but there are 4 other traps that we need to speak about. Number 1, the spring trap. Your spring traps are going to be your most effective tools against hogs, or your second most effective tool against hogs, and your first most effective tool against giants. So if you're fighting a serious war clan, they won't typically use a giant healer composition. However, if they do, you want to make sure your spring traps are in between a couple of defenses, preferably on the outskirts of your base, so those spring traps are activated at the beginning of their attack.
Yeah, that's a great point. Let's just say that you have and again, if someone's attacking you with giant healer, just put a smile on your face and don't really worry about the outcome because if you're a serious war clan, you're probably going to win that war. But let's say they have giants coming in, they bust through this wall here. Like Rex was saying, they're going to kill this defense, and then no matter which direction they go, they're heading to the next closest defensive building, which is not obstructed by a wall. That's these 2 buildings. So you're going to get effect from every one of these spring traps, possibly springing as much as 3 giants per trap. That can end their raid way short because even if they've got a healer back here, there's nothing a healer can do for them when they're getting tossed out of the map. So having it in entry type locations next to your defensive buildings is the proper placement.
Yeah, that was a great point, Jake. Let's talk about another effective way to set up your spring traps, and it's putting 2 of these spring traps together, or 2 or more spring traps together. I've seen bases where there's 6 spring traps all together, and one unlucky person, let's say there are all 6 spring traps here, and some poor attacker decided to attack from the left with their hogs, and they brought up to 20 hogs. After they destroy this archer tower, the hogs will run into this cannon, and since there's 6 spring traps all together, there's a potential of springing 18 hogs at once. That's just devastating for your hog raid because the attacker is left with only 12 hogs.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And like you said, especially if that's their entry point, man, if you lose those right out of the gates, those hogs that just got sprung or have only taken out 1 defensive building, it can absolutely devastate a raid. I prefer spring traps side by side like this as opposed to in a coming this direction line like Moni's got them. I would rather have 2 in a row because rarely do troops funnel in a straight line, in a single file line. Okay, they're not coming in and just going to hit that one. They're going to be spread out a little bit, and they're going to hit both side spring traps if they're in that direction. But that's a great point. Bunched up spring traps, if you sort of have a natural entry point, most people are attacking you, you know where they're going to enter your base, man, you can set them up with some tough spring traps to make a big difference.
Yeah, and another technique that I see a lot of people do is to put a spring trap here and then put 2 walls right here so that they know troops funnel into that one space and get hit by that spring trap. This can be both beneficial or both advantageous and disadvantageous to you because one, yeah, you know those spring traps are going to be effective in springing a troop. However, if you do that 6 times, they know exactly where your spring traps are.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. To me, you might as well send them a letter before the war starts. Let them know exactly where your spring traps are. It's much more intimidating when you know you've got that hog ring and you're not sure where those spring traps are, as opposed to those single walls, basically having a neon sign pointing to them, say, "Here's a spring trap." Because there are methods you can take to avoid at least some of them. And if, as a hog raider, if you can eliminate, let's say, even 2 spring traps, I mean, they only get 6. That can make a big difference. So I'm not a fan of that. I would rather have, like you said, 2 or 3 in a row and then go from there.
Yeah, I like to design my base that way too. Let's go ahead and move on to the next trap. And the next trap we're going to talk about is your red air bomb. These red air bombs don't do much damage to a dragon. However, they can be very effective to minions or a group of loons. Moniz has them split up, and I actually don't like this myself. I like to put 4 air bombs together in one section. So let's say this Tesla wasn't here, and someone was drag-looning you from the top. If you have 4 red air bombs together here, and the raider releases their loons too quickly, these loons are going to be clumped up because they're going to be going for the first defense in their path. And that's either this cannon, if it's not destroyed, or this air defense. And these 4 air bombs have the potential to destroy all your clumped air balloons at once.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. In a farming base, okay, yeah, it makes sense to spread them out. You might get Lunian attacked, and having those air mines, or excuse me, those air bombs spread out to take out those groups of minions that are coming at you makes sense. But in a war, I mean, again, if you've got a Town Hall 8 trying to Lunian you, just smile and don't worry about what happens because you're going to win that war. But more times than not, you're going to have dragons or a dragloon attack. Then all of a sudden, if your air bombs are clumped up and he does make a timing mistake, or those, let's say those dragons get straight off to the side and those balloons are going to the core, and all of a sudden four bombs hit those balloons that are coming out of his clan castle, that's a game changer. So definitely I agree with you, Rex. Clump them up, give yourself a chance to ruin his raid.
Yeah, we've seen it time and time again, destroying raids where people will loonian you, and then all of a sudden, boom, all your loons are gone. It's pretty devastating for both the attacker and the defender to watch, because you know you just feel really bad when you see a group of 10 loons go down without doing any damage.
Yeah, well, I don't feel bad. Maybe you do, but I like it.
Yeah, well, I guess as the defender, it's not as devastating. Let's move on to the next air mine, and this is your seeking air mine. And these ones are very effective against dragons, or your. There's 2 ways to place them. In Town Hall 8, they're really good against dragons. At Town Hall 9, you're going to want to place them considering for holo, but we're going to talk about that in a future date. But there's 2 ways to place these air mines. Either on the outskirts of your base, or inside, somewhere near the core. So what are some of the advantages of putting them on the outskirts?
Yeah, it's a gamble is what it is, Rex. If you're putting them on the outskirts, the risk is they don't enter from that location. All right, if they don't, if you've got them up here where you drew that one, let's say you got your other one here, and my dragon attack or my dragloon attack enters, I decide to come in from the bottom or even from the side over here. Okay, they're not in play till the outcome of the raid has already been determined. However, the flip side of that coin, let's say you place them there, and I do decide to come in from the top. All of a sudden, I'm -2 dragons before this raid ever gets started good. So it's a gamble. Do you want to ensure if you place them in the core that they're gonna hit the dragons at some point, or do you gamble? I know where the most likely entry point is on this dragon attack, and I'm going to try to take him out on the front end because -2 dragons from the get-go is a huge DPS difference over the life of the raid.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The other option that you have is to put them in the core, and if you put them in the core, you know the dragons are going to be going down that path somewhere in the raid. And what you're hoping is, this is also a gamble in my eyes as well. You're hoping that you either these mines choose a brand new dragon with full HP, and then the air defense destroys that dragon very quickly. The downside is if a loon comes in first, or a very damaged dragon decides to activate that seeking air mine, then they're a little bit less effective.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the most common thing that happens occasionally is that your loons will get in there, they'll soak them up, and losing a balloon is not as devastating to a dragoon raid as it is a dragon. I would agree with that.
Yeah, one thing, if you do decide to put them in the core, is not to place them too close together. I've done this mistake in the past. I know a lot of people do it. But if you have two air mines that are stuck together, it can be both, again, advantageous and disadvantageous to your raid, depending on how the raid goes. The advantage is if a brand new dragon just happens to fly in this zone and both air mines kill off one dragon, boom, it's gone. However, the disadvantage is if that dragon's already hurt and both air mines decide to kill it off, then you're already down. You're down another air mine for nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. If that air defense has been pecking away at him, and let's say he's only got a sliver of life left, and he triggers both air mines, yeah, you've kind of hurt yourself in that situation. So I would agree. Spread them out at least a little bit to where you have at least the possibility of two different dragons trigger them.
Let's go ahead and move on to our next trap, and this is the small bomb. These are my least favorite traps. They're not too effective in doing much. The nice thing that they have is a knockback effect, so I like to sometimes put them against the wall to push back a wall breaker. Sometimes they're effective in killing off hurt wizards or archers, but I'm not quite sure what to do with these. It's kind of an awkward trap nowadays.
Yeah, I agree. They're almost worthless. They're not completely worthless, but they're near it. And there's really no right or wrong. I mean, I wouldn't even begrudge someone sticking them in a corner. You know they're going to pull your clan castle troops to that area. I mean, there's just no really good way to use them. They're minorly effective at best. So I would agree with you there. It's just sort of whatever. Put them where you want to.
Yeah, so one of the best ways to use them, I guess, is to put them in a clump and kind of go for like a psychological effect where the person thinks there's a giant bomb there or a giant bomb set, and these bombs instead trigger, so they waste a heal in trying to heal their hogs where they could have probably used it more effective in an else place.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, it's a good raider will know this is and have the reaction speed to know that this is just a small bomb, and it'll really affect.
Yeah, and what Moniz did here is a fine thing. It's a valid thing. She could hypothetically she could soften up some hogs, and then they trigger this and it wipes them out. That happens rarely, but it could happen. So that's a fine use of what she's done there. But again, there's just no here's what you got to do with them. That's just not the way these traps work.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we don't have our last trap here. Is our skeleton trap. But let's go ahead and talk briefly about them.
Yeah.
Where would be the best place to put a skeleton trap? And what would you target them to, ground or air?
Well, and that's funny you should ask that because we just had a discussion of this in One Hive. Me and another co-leader actually were talking about it, giving a Town Hall 8 some advice on his clan or on his war base. And he thought that the air mines were best used set to ground. And my opinion is at Town Hall 8 they are best set to air. It's not like having a witch in your clan castle where the dragons will trigger them. if you have your skelly trap set to ground, an air defense is not going to trigger that skeleton trap. So it's the king would have to trigger it, or some ground troop that they deploy. So hypothetically, if you get hit with a Dragloon, which in my opinion is the most common three-star attack at Town Hall 8, you've essentially made that trap worthless. But obviously, the other co-leader disagreed, so there is some discrepancy here. I'm curious to know what your opinion is on that, Rex.
Yeah, I actually concur with you. I think the best placement for these skeleton traps is somewhere in the core and set to air. Uh, at Town Hall 8, you don't see. I think the skeleton traps is most effective against P.E.K.K.A. raids or raids with Valks, and you don't see that very commonly in Town Hall 8s. Skeleton traps are not as effective against hogs because, I mean, yes, it's kind of trips you out when you see a group of skeletons chasing your hog and you want to keep them healed. But these skeletons only do 25 damage per second, and there's only 4 of them at Town Hall 8. So I think your best option is to put it somewhere in the core, distract those dragons, and have them waste an attack, because each breath of a dragon is very slow, and it's very precious because it's very slow. Also, because of these skeletons are not on the ground, they're in the air, any defenses below them or any buildings below them will not get splashed.
Man, I couldn't agree with you more. I think you nailed it. I think you broke it down perfectly. I have a completely different opinion at Town Hall 9, but at Town Hall 8, it sort of plays the same way at Town Hall 9. At Town Hall 9, you're wanting to soak up P.E.K.K.A. attacks. At Town Hall 8, you're wanting to soak up those dragon attacks. So if you've got 4 little skeletons floating around and maybe they only soak up 2 dragon breaths, that can be huge. So I agree with you 100% on that.
So let's talk about our next point here. This is the Tesla. We briefly talked about the hidden Teslas earlier when we were talking about defenses, but Teslas, again, are one of your highest sources of damage per second if you upgraded them. If you didn't, then you can use them for a different purpose, but generally, I would like to see more Town Hall 8s put their high DPS Teslas in the core so that they're protected. And while they're in the core, they're shelling out massive amounts of damage. Some people like to put them on the exterior of the base, sometimes as a lure trap or a lure block. What are your thoughts on this, Jake?
Man, I think you nailed it. In my opinion, there's only 2 uses for your Tesla. One is a lure, like you said, a lure trap. You think, oh, this is an easy lure, and hypothetically, she's got a Tesla here and a Tesla here, and they didn't prepare for that. They only brought a giant to lure this clan castle, so they thought it was an easy lure. Now you've screwed up that attack because they're not prepared for what you brought. The downside of that strategy is it's only going to work once. The guy doing cleanup that's looking at that is going to say, okay, now I know where they're at. The flip side of that is, like you said, placing them in the core and protecting them because they have a high rate of fire and they can definitely deal out some damage quickly. So those are, in my opinion, the 2 uses for them. Let's say you're an early Town Hall 8 and you've got a Tesla that is not fully upgraded, then there's no question. If you've got a level 1, a level 2, level 3 maybe Tesla, use it as a trap because it doesn't deal that damage. If you've got a max level Tesla, I think in the core is probably the place for it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You're absolutely right. The other time I've seen Teslas do is to kind of trick out so you make an easy hog base and then put the Teslas in the corners. But again, this is probably not that effective because, yeah, it might fend off one attack, but then you're sacrificing your highest DPS building for just something to prevent them and waste time.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as you know what you're doing going in, just know that any type of a distraction or a trap or a trick is only going to work once. If you're raiding or you're warring against a serious war clan, they're going to scout your base. They're going to watch the replays. The next guy's going to be prepared for it. So as long as you know that, use them how you will. Again, I think at low level, they're good for traps. At high level, use them for the DPS if they are.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and move on to our what we like to call our no-nos. And what we mean by this is common mistakes that we see in a lot of people's war bases. So what are some of the no-nos in your eyes, Jake?
Well, the first one is one that we touched on, and it sort of bounces off of our key elements. Seeing three air defenses in a core, that's a no-no. If someone is simply goes to the how-to Dragaloon video that we've posted and takes those tips and uses them against you, they're going to three-star your Town Hall 8 every time. So to me, that's one of the biggest Town Hall 8 no-nos is don't clump up your air defenses. People think three air defenses in a core is a good air defense. In actuality, it's the opposite.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go ahead and highlight an example for you. Let's say this air defense, there are three air defenses. Of course, in this base design, there's no spots. But let's say there's three air defenses in these three locations. And this would be a terrible way to lay out your air defenses because regardless of which direction the loons are coming from, if they are coming from the bottom, they're going to go from air defense to air defense and knock these out. This is a terrible location for these air defenses, like Jake was saying. Make sure you have enough of a spacer or a buffer between air defenses with high storage, with high HP buildings like your storages, or even a moat of sorts. I'm not a big fan of moats at Town Hall 8s, but that can also be an effective method. Let's move on to our next no-no. And this one you see very common is buildings on the outside corners of your base. And this is a no-no because this space has an easy lure. If they were to send in a couple of giants or a couple of hogs, the lure is done. Putting bases, yeah, you're trying to prevent them and make them forget, waste time, whatever you're trying to do with this purpose on placing these outside buildings here. It's not a good way because you're giving them a free anchor. And an anchor is after you lure somewhere to bring all their troops to. And if they were to lure here, drop one archer here, this archer would be attacking this building. All your troops are going to be going in an area where there's no defense, so they're free and clear to fight your CC troops, one of the most valuable assets in your defense, in a spot and just to destroy them completely.
Yeah, we see it all the time, and it's just you're not helping yourself. I could probably count on one hand the times that I've seen that town hall, or excuse me, that builder hut in the corner save the three-star. It has happened, but literally, it's like it's rare. Okay, what you're doing is doing them a favor. You're putting them a place, like Rex said, to drop one troop, one archer, one barbarian. It doesn't matter, and all the clan castles are going to run out there and take their time. Ideally, what you want is no buildings, like Moni's got here. No buildings to where it doesn't matter where I drop my barbarian. Even if I drop him out here, he's going to start immediately walking up. He's going to get in range of this cannon, and the cannon's going to take him out. He's got to drop another barbarian. And slowly, my clan castle troops are going to come out. And even when they do, you've made them use much more troop, much more army space, like we talked about earlier. Especially at Town Hall 8, army space is at a premium. The more you can make them use to do a simple lure, the better. So never give them a freebie by putting a free anchor out there in the corner for them.
Yeah, I think you did a perfect job of describing exactly what happens. And I don't think there's any other no-nos. I can't think of anything else. Is there anything else on your end?
Yeah, before we go, it's a small one, but and it's perfectly illustrated here by Money. Having these spring traps by this giant bomb. I'm always seeing people do this. It's not I don't know if it's a no-no. It's just sort of it's probably not the best use. These spring traps placed in different locations would be better because why spring a troop that's fixing to get blown up by a giant bomb? It's just sort of a poor utilization of that trap. It's not, I don't know if we'd put it in the no-no category, but I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. You want to make sure your spring traps are either in a place to devastate a raid at the beginning, or spread them throughout, sprinkle them throughout your base, and have it so the other traps can effectively be used while your spring traps are being effectively used. So I think you said it pretty eloquently.
All right, well, move on.
We need to talk about one more thing, and this is just like a quick point. We briefly talk about making an unlurable clan castle, but if you are going to put a lurable clan castle, what are some of the better ways to load up your troops?
I see this pretty often, and I'm surprised. Even good raiders in our clan have sort of had this confused in their head, and I'm not sure why. We take things for granted at One Hive because we've been doing this at a high level for so long, but I'm quite positive that there's people out there making this mistake. If you are going to have an easily lurable clan castle, put powerful troops in that clan castle. Just like Money's got here, like Rex said, one giant can probably lure this entire clan castle. She should have something powerful in there, a witch, several wizards, even at Town Hall 8, sometimes a dragon. If you're going to make it a very difficult lure, make it a difficult lure. Load that thing up with archers, maybe one wizard on the back end. Make it as hard on them as you can. Make them invest that much more into their lure. Again, troop space at a premium. Make them use as much as you can if you're going to design your base around a difficult lure clan castle.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly there, Jake. One more quick thing before we go is I watched this replay, and we can see here Moni's base has been 2-starred. But after I watched this replay, the enemy clan actually had to have a Town Hall 9 drop down to attack this base. Yes, if you fight with a good Warden clan, a Town Hall 8 will most likely just 3-star a Town Hall 8. But if you can get a Town Hall 9 to attack a Town Hall 8, that's a huge win for your clan.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. At Town Hall 8, realize that any Town Hall 8 base can be 3-starred by another Town Hall 8. And this will continue on to Town Hall 9. Town Hall 10 is a whole different game in essence. But don't be discouraged if you do get 3-starred. It doesn't mean your base is garbage. Don't throw it in the trash. If you can make it difficult on them, and especially like Rex said, if you can make them bring a Town Hall 9 down to 3-star your base, that's a win. That's a win every time. So don't be discouraged by that. Be proud of that.
Yeah, and then just to add on to your point there, if you design a base and you like it, don't throw it in the trash. Make tweaks. Watch every war after war, see how people are attacking, and get a good idea where they are identifying the weak points in the base, and find fixes, find good ways to adjust your base so that you have a stronger section. One of the most effective tools in base design is the surprise factor. It's where you place certain traps or certain Teslas where they're not expecting it, and so they're wasting another attack to attack your base.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think it catches people off guard, and even a small thing, not having a trap where they thought it was, or like Rex said, having a Tesla out there where they weren't ready for it. It's a psychological thing. It can throw an entire attack off. It might be a minor thing, but all of a sudden that guy that's attacking you is on tilt. And every attack you can soak up to where they have to come back and clean up your base, again, that's a win. So I agree, Rex. Anything else before we move on? Next one will be obviously Town Hall 9. It'll be sort of a new set of rules, but we'll expand on this going up to Town Hall 9.
I think we touched about everything. I forgot to mention when we were talking about the defenses. And this real quickly, make sure if you are protecting all your buildings that they have both air and ground coverage. So like an archer tower here will cover all of these air buildings. This side has a little bit slightly less air coverage. This air defense will cover just enough, but they can draw out troops with the minion. So just maybe an archer tower there and a cannon back here. But something you should consider.
Yeah, sounds good, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it helps you when you're designing your base. One thing I want to reiterate before we go, don't copy bases. I know people like to post them on the forums, and there's some good bases there, but bases that are on the forums give people weeks, months to dissect and break down and learn how to attack it. A base they've never seen before, they've only got 24 hours, and they've never had practice on that base. So use these tips, but be creative, make your own base, and don't copy your buddies or your clanmates' base. Make your own. It's going to make it more difficult on the enemy. I hope you guys can excuse the crayon third grader drawing that Rex has presented here on the side. That's his list. It's going to be throughout this mini-series, so just bear with him there. He can't write very well. Just joking with you, buddy. Anything else before you will say before we go?
No, just if you like these types of videos and this base design video was helpful, please comment and please support us. Please subscribe. That's all I got to say.
Until next time, this is Jake and Rex from One Hive doing our very best to help you guys suck less.